Euromaxx highlights. In this edition, Cold Challenge, baritone David Stout at the Bregenz Winter Festival. Daring design, Maurizio Galante branches out from fashion into furniture. And Classic Chair, a Bauhaus design from 1925 that shook the world. Euromaxx highlights, and here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
Hi there, and welcome to the show. Well, most people don't take very kindly to spiders, but for artist Tomas Saraceno, they're a source of endless fascination. The Frankfurt-based artist uses spider webs as just one of his sources of inspiration from nature. His work has been featured a couple of times already at the Venice Biennale, and he's currently on display in Copenhagen in a new show called Rethink.
These suspended balloons are an installation by the Argentinian artist Tomas Saraceno in the Statens Museum for Kunst in Copenhagen. Spheres is the name of the work. The balls are made of PVC. They're incorporated into an organic web that resembles that of a spider.
I'm dedicating a lot of my time towards spider. What I can mention, a few of them is like, for example, the strength of the spider web, right? It's one of the strongest material today on Earth. And then one of the things that you can realize how strong is when you spray them with water, when it rains and they're outside in the nature, you can see how big drop of water is supported by something which is a nanomaterial.
Saraceno, who did his training as an architect, likens spider webs to a type of natural steel. In order to research the possible forms that spiders create, the designer has 8 spiders in his studio in Frankfurt. The constructions of the Black Widow are his favorite, perhaps because it builds 3-dimensional webs. In order to create a perfect scale model, Saraceno enlisted the help of scientists at the Technical University in Darmstadt.
We discovered that nobody have ever done this before. And then it somehow was a big challenge. We start for the Venice Biennale. We thought that it's something easy. We take one of the plexiglass houses, we put a spider inside, then we scan it, we get a 3D data and we rebuild it. But we would figure it out that nobody ever did it, and there was no machine, there was no method of how to scan or get a 3-dimensional data of a spider web.
In an old aircraft hangar in Frankfurt, Tomas Saraceno is working with 8 students on a copy of a Black Widow web. Every day, the team spends up to 12 hours here, setting up hundreds of nylon strings. In his design work, Saraceno often works with biologists and astrophysicists. For this current installation, he consulted the knowledge of an arachnologist, a spider expert. Art and science are no contradiction, as far as Saraceno is concerned.
Webs, the astrophysician stars, me, an artist who try to connect something and set up a dialogue between things. And I think the interesting thing is like when everybody have his own passion, his own time to dedicate something, and then together come up. At the end, it's a sharing result, and it's sharing passion, it's a sharing time, and then I think so we will try to see something.
But what might seem simple in nature is, in reality, a 2-month job. 54 kilometers of string and 11,000 hooks are needed for this 1:16 ratio construction. This web will be part of his next exhibition in Stockholm. A detailed project like this requires a lot of patience, but also plenty of passion.
I mean, when you look at it, it's impossible not to love them. It's like really how delicate they come, and then from one line get more, and then somehow then you start to learn, and then why is this love? But first it's a love or an enthusiasm, or when you look, it's like you never know why you like so much something.
Saraceno's plan is to continue to learn all that he can about the complex geometry that exists in nature. And it seems that the art world can't get enough of it.
The Austrian city of Bregenz on the eastern shores of Lake Constance is famous for its floating opera stage, the distinctive element of its annual summer music festival. But whilst we endure a real old-fashioned winter, the Bregenzer crew is far from idle and amazes with yet another operatic coup against the elements in Lech am Arlberg.
Love, hate, and jealousy between a father and his daughter. The themes of Verdi's opera, Louisa Miller. A winter storm provides the perfect backdrop for the Lech am Arlberg show in the snow. It's British baritone David Stout's first appearance here.
The real difficulty out here is the altitude. So when you prepare a phrase, a legato phrase, then you have to take in twice as much air as you normally do. And of course you have to expel it, or you have to get rid of it. So there's lots of breathing out going on.
A day before, Stout tries out the stage for the first time with director Dorothea Schäfer and his Greek singing partner, Elena Kelesidi. The music is on tape. It's too frosty out here for stringed instruments. The scenery is a 7-meter-tall ice sculpture.
There's a lot of very, very sheer drops just coming off the side of the hat. And yeah, it's dangerous, so you have to watch your footing. But I've got my snowboard boots on, so I should be nice and gripped to the snow.
The chorus members inspect the stage to make sure they'll be safe. The steps can be especially dangerous. The edges mustn't be allowed to break off. The snow stage at Lech has a different shape every year. This year, it's a sculpture of Giuseppe Verdi's head. It took 2 sculptors 14 days to carve it from a 2,000 cubic meter block of snow. The biggest difficulty this year was the composer's hat.
In the middle of the brim of the hat, there are 6 large reinforced steel girders that support it.
While the chorus gets used to the stage, David Stout takes a lunch break. And in Lech, it's easy to decide how to spend your free time. The small resort lies in the Alps, nearly 1,500 meters above sea level. And it's famous for its snowy slopes.
Well, it's great to get warmed up for a performance, so what better way? So providing you're taking it nice and slow in one of the best resorts in the world, if not the best resort in the world. It's an absolute privilege to be here in Lech, and what a fantastic day to ski.
The day of the premiere, just 15 minutes before his entrance, David Stout is completely concentrated. He warmed up his voice in the hotel. Now he has to protect it. Outside, it's 6 degrees below 0 Celsius and snowing heavily. Aida, Rigoletto, Louisa Miller, and La Traviata, a medley from Verdi operas performed before an audience of nearly 3,500.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was really good. The wind and the snow made it amazing. Very atmospheric.
It was pretty cold, but we warmed ourselves up by applauding.
I tip my hat to the singers in this cold weather. Singing is always an effort. This was wonderful.
Verdi in the Snow, a great winter experience for fans of the opera and the Alps.
In France, only a very select elite of designers are authorized to work as Haute Couture labels, and Italian designer Maurizio Galante is one of those who has committed himself to the very highest standards of custom-fitted dressmaking. His creations have found permanent homes in London's Victoria and Albert Museum and the Costume Institute in Kyoto, so perhaps it's no surprise that his latest show also pushed the envelope.
This isn't a customary concert evening, it's a fashion show, staged by Maurizio Galante. In place of models, he's hired the American Grammy-winning soprano June Anderson to present his fashions.
For me, haute couture is first of all a feeling. I'm not interested in how many hours of handcrafting went into a creation. What's essential is the mood a dress creates.
Maurizio Galante wows the audience with bright clothes made with silk and ostrich feathers.
He doesn't make clothes. He makes works of art. For him, a dress has to be able to exist on its own. It can be worn on the body, but it can also just have its own place, like a work of art.
Maurizio Galante is known for unusual combinations. He studied fashion design and architecture in Rome, and he not only creates unconventional clothes, he also loves to design furniture and all kinds of objects, such as vases and lamps. In some of his creations, the connection between furniture and clothing is obvious.
For me, the only difference is that a piece of clothing and a piece of furniture don't have the same usage. In this connection, I was interested in three-dimensional embroidery. Each piece is done by hand, so it is different from all the others. But although it's one of a kind, it doesn't cost more than a leather armchair, between 1,500 and 2,000 euros.
Maurizio Galante loves a challenge. He once decorated a 4-star hotel in southern Italy. He created an exhibition piece for the crystal manufacturer Baccarat. And he's even been known to clothe a champagne bottle. But back to fashion. At his Paris studio, Maurizio Galante has been working day and night on his new collection. Now 46 years old, he designed his first haute couture clothing 20 years ago, aimed at self-confident women who want one-of-a-kind clothing for that special occasion.
Many clients come to me and say that at cocktail parties or other events, people have asked them about the clothing or wanted to touch them. I think it's wonderful that communication between people arises in this way.
4 seamstresses worked for a total of 300 hours to make this coat with countless small ostrich feathers.
It's built up like a net. Wherever a vertical thread meets a horizontal thread, a feather connects them. When designing this piece, I was thinking of a cloud.
The unconventional fashion show seems to have pleased the critics, too.
This is haute couture the way we love it. Big feelings, beautiful clothing, and a totally unreal and extremely sophisticated form of presentation.
I really don't know any other designer for whom fashion is an artistic means of expression to such a degree.
And few other designers could get away with staging a fashion show in the form of a concert and find it so readily accepted as with Maurizio Galante. Parisians love the way he always manages to surprise them.
Well, next up, a German design that also surprised, even shocked, when it was launched in 1925. The Wassily Chair was created by Bauhaus designer Marcel Breuer, who got the idea for the tubular steel armchair from his bicycle handlebars. Well, this flash of inspiration led to a design classic.
a symbol of modernism and probably the most famous Bauhaus product. The Model B3 chair, known simply as the Wassily Chair. A benchmark that paved the way for a new chapter in the history of furniture design. Bauhaus expert Werner Möller says the chair marked a radical break from the standard designs of its time.
The special thing is the different conception of space and material. If you're used to the upholstered lounges of the 19th century, then this new design takes away the very essence of what you are used to. The construction is very clear. It uses new material, like these seamless steel rods.
And this is where it all began. In the 1920s, the Bauhaus in Dessau became a creative center and a workshop for some of the key architects and artists of the 20th century. Under the direction of Walter Gropius, some of the big names of the time came to the Bauhaus Dessau and helped define the movement. One of these was Marcel Breuer, responsible for furniture design. For the auditorium, Marcel Breuer designed a range of furniture that captured a brand new aesthetic. Lightweight, affordable and hygienic. But Breuer was disappointed that initially the designs failed to become common household objects. The Wassily chair in particular was just too expensive and too revolutionary in design.
I believe that the chair, because it is so stripped down and transparent, makes the person sitting on it feel exposed, almost naked and unprotected. One is forced to adopt a very upright posture and is therefore inclined to try to cover oneself up a little bit more, perhaps by crossing one's legs, because everything is see-through and uncovered. It's not like sitting in a big armchair in which you can easily hide.
Maybe that's why the chair barely sold when it first came out. Consumer tastes were simply not in tune with the new design. It was more an artwork than a functional object, and only popular among the cultural elite. Omar Akbar, former director of the Bauhaus in Dessau, is a fan of the Wassily chair. He's owned one for a quarter of a century, taking it all over the world, wherever his career takes him. At the moment, it's in his flat in Berlin.
I sometimes ask myself how many times I may have sat in this chair in the past 20 years. Perhaps a week. Not because I wasn't actually here, but because I seem to have different ideas of what comfort is. This chair has a special meaning to me in the context of my apartment's interior design. Sometimes I think it's a symbol. Breuer, I would say, is a representation of a whole new lifestyle. It's no longer about the chair itself, how comfortable it is, or even the way it looks. Instead, it's a statement in itself. This is me.
The nickname Wassily chair was given to the 1960s edition of the chair, which was a homage to the famous artist Wassily Kandinsky, Breuer's colleague at the Bauhaus. It was only after this that the Wassily chair really caught on and triggered a craze for steel rod furniture. 80 years on, the tool of contemporary life, as Breuer affectionately dubbed it, is still a symbol of modernism and will probably never go out of style.
And now to German painter Herbert Beck, who's considered to be the last living German expressionist. And as he's just turned 90 years old, we took in a timely exhibition.
Well, I think that's a foreign substance up there.
Herbert Beck is one of the most renowned watercolor artists of his generation. He's almost 90, but he still attends every exhibition showing his work. This gallery in Düsseldorf has collated pictures of the artist's professional life, spanning the last 40 years. They're all watercolors, even if that's sometimes hard to believe. The exhibition is dominated by paintings of human faces. Beck calls them faces of the world. Until recently, they were on display in Beijing. The series includes portrayals of different characters, moods, and facial expressions. Beck is frequently inspired by the view from his studio in the Bavarian town of Tegernsee. Despite his age, he still works on his art every day. He paints on moistened, laid paper using a wet-on-wet technique that he has perfected. The rest is intuition. The motif may be unrecognizable in the early stages, but the artist knows what he's aiming for. This will be another one of his faces.
These faces, I'd like to somehow create a small documentation, faces of our time. Sometimes they're sad, and I think they give the impression of being wounded, or at least I'd like them to.
Many of Beck's paintings are large and brightly colored. He paints still life, frequently flowers, and he also does landscapes using deep, calming colors.
I love sonorous, powerful colors. That probably dates back many years, to the time when I met Emil Nolde. His powerful watercolors remain a model for me to this day.
The opening of the Düsseldorf exhibition was a huge success. Several pictures were sold on the first day. The collectors had good cause to celebrate. After all, it's not every day you get your hands on an original painting by Herbert Beck.
And before we go, we're going to take a quick trip to a very icy Russian capital. With temperatures hovering around -20 degrees, Moscow is a chilly place to be at this time of year. But conditions are just right for a truly romantic Russian experience and ideal for delving into the Russian soul.
Tenaciously, the sightseeing boat Ferdinand makes its way through the ice, past modern skyscrapers and tower blocks left over from the Soviet era. The Ferdinand is the latest tourist attraction in the Russian capital, with its population of 10.5 million.
We can hear the ice cracking and moving apart. It's unbelievable. You can feel the deck vibrating. It's much more exciting than in summer.
I find it very romantic. Wonderful.
Before long, the Kremlin comes into view. It's one of the city's most photographed landmarks. The fortified citadel has towered over the banks of the river since the 15th century. The complex is protected by a 3.5-meter thick outer wall. The golden domes of its 4 churches dominate the Moscow skyline. Nearby St. Basil's Cathedral is another landmark. You can rent skates on Red Square and take a turn around the most famous ice rink in the country. The ornaments from the Russian New Year celebrations are still hanging.
It's in the middle of central Moscow, and everything's so nicely decorated.
This ice rink is just fantastic. It's great for skating, especially with those girls there.
The Ferdinand continues its journey downriver. While the boat's passengers are tucking into a 3-course menu, the Sparrow Hills become visible on the horizon. In winter, both tourists and Muscovites come here to ski. A good 70 meters above the city center, young athletes are busy training for the next Winter Olympics, surrounded by stunning views.
It's fantastic to go skiing and see the whole of Moscow at your feet.
Moscow is such a beautiful city, and we get a chance to train in front of the scenery. Fantastic.
Art lovers can pay a visit to the Tretyakov Gallery, which features Russian art dating from the 11th to the early 20th century. New bars and discos are springing up almost daily in the Russian capital. DJ Vlad regularly works in Moscow. He loves the nightlife here. While the party rages on, the Ferdinand continues its rounds on the River Moskva, revealing just how much the city has to offer, even in winter, when temperatures drop as low as -30 degrees Celsius.
Well, don't forget you can find our Euromaxx highlights on YouTube, and that does bring us to the end of this edition. So until we meet again, all the best from Berlin, and thanks for watching. Tschüss.